Welcome to Muscle Maintenance with In Shape Fitness. I'm Coach Kim. Today's podcast workout is called On the Floor and On Your Feet. Really simple, really basic exercise regimen that you can do without equipment, without shoes on your feet, in your living room, first thing in the morning, which is when it's best, or maybe, in a conference room at your office once you sneak in and get a little work done. But you don't need any equipment and you don't need shoes on your feet. That's the main thing. These are really simple exercises you know and maybe don't love, but you definitely know them. It's just a function of making some combinations interesting in order to elevate your heart rate, work your entire body, but make you really just feel great afterwards. It's going to take about 15 minutes. So let's get started with a quick postural systems check. That means you are simply thinking about where your body parts are in space, right? So just thinking about the alignment of your spine, really important, because our sedentary lives have produced these strange deviations to proper posture that you don't even realize are happening. There's the head that doesn't really sit on top of your neck vertically anymore. And that's a really big problem, both in terms of pain that can develop in the back of your neck and stresses on the sides of your head, as well as the range of motion that your neck is able to maintain. It also changes your center of gravity. So you want to make sure that your head is back. You want your ears and your shoulders to line up vertically. That means you also want to open up your chest. You push your shoulders back a little bit. Your arms, now this is interesting. Most people don't realize that the neutral position for your hanging down your sides arms is such that the palms kind of face towards, but then out a little bit. Your thumbs kind of face away from your body. Not completely, but a little bit, not forward. They don't face forward, your thumbs, and your palms don't kind of line up against and your palms facing the sides of your legs, but rather they turn out to about a 45-degree angle. That also helps keep your chest open. Then moving down the body, down the trunk, you want to make sure that your back is straight and that your tailbone is slightly tucked in if you have a tendency of kind of sticking your butt out, which is very normal considering most people spend the majority of their waking day seated. The pelvis tilts forward as you're seated in a chair. As you're taking deep breaths, as you're thinking about these variations, when you tuck in your tailbone and make sure your pelvis is straight up and down, you also have the opportunity to pull in and up on your belly button a little bit, which zips up your tummy muscles and engages your trunk. Then lastly, think about your legs and your feet. You want your feet to be placed on the floor equally, like pressing into the floor with your right leg and your left leg equally. You don't want your toes to turn out. You want your feet to be straight, parallel to one another, and about shoulder length apart. Okay, a little light bounce in your knees. You can kind of play with a little bit. You don't want to lock your knees completely. So now let's just do a quick couple of exercises that will help activate your lower limbs, because we're going to start on the floor, but we want to make sure that we get down to the floor properly. So what I want you to do is a quick march. You can also add a shoulder press, and you can make it a high knee jog if you would rather get your heart rate up quickly. But a march where you're lifting the knees up, measured momentum, right? You want deliberate movements here. You don't want to just sort of bounce your legs around and let gravity pull them back down. You want to lift the knee up to about hip level and then lower the leg back down deliberately and alternate, obviously, as a march indicates, and then push your arms up into the air and a shoulder press formation. Again, just to activate the shoulders and your hips and your knees a little bit. Okay. Now, as you lift up in the march, you're going to press your foot down to the opposite side of the body. It was kind of like a Greek dance or karaoke, but you lift up the left knee and then the left foot is going to take a step down across the body to the right and then lifts back up and then back over to the left. And then you alternate with the right leg. The right knee lifts up and then the right foot presses down on the floor across the left foot to the other side of the body on the left, then lifts back up and goes back to the start on the right side. And just continue that back and forth motion, up and over, get a little bit of diagonal movement. So it seems, especially when the only exercise that you may get is that forward movement that you use to go to the end of your, driveway to get the mail, to walk down the block to catch a bus, or to maybe go on a jog or a bicycle ride. It's that forward two-dimensional movement. But your hip is designed for multi-dimensional movement. And that means that this diagonal movement is really, really helpful, structurally sound in terms of preparing your body for the stability that it needs to exercise without sort of taking risks, if you will. Now, the last thing we're going to do to warm up before we go to the floor is for you to practice a standard squat. Sitting into an imaginary or a real chair is fine as well. You sit down and back into that imaginary chair without letting your knees go past the tips of your toes. That's really, really important. And then you exhale as you lift up. Inhale as you lower down. Pause for just a fraction of a second. You can do it. Just a second. And then lift up by pressing the heels into the floor and squeezing your glutes, the butt cheeks. Really, really productive use of your energy, because if you're not doing a squat correctly, you're just working the thigh muscles. But if you do squats, perform a squat slowly and in a deliberate fashion, you press the heels into the floor. That activates the lower part of your legs. And when you squeeze your glutes, you force the back of the leg to help lift the body straight up. Now, squats are also awesome because you're interacting with gravity. You've got about 10 more seconds to do your squats, so you continue to inhale down, exhale as you lift back up. That interaction with the gravitational force of our earth is the resistance. It's the weight pushing up against gravity, is just like using a weight. So don't let anyone tell you that you always need weights in your hands if you're going to perform squats. You don't. Your body weighs enough so you can elevate your heart rate without them. Okay, now take a deep breath and properly lower your body down to your floor, bending your knees, bending your hips, and then go ahead and put your hands and your knees on the floor. And you're in kind of a quadruped, the four-legged animal pose we call quadruped. So you want to make sure before we start moving around here that your hands and your wrists rather are directly underneath your shoulders, a vertical line straight up and down, and then that your hips and your knees are also straight up and down. And your head is in neutral position, so you're facing the floor. If you want to move your head around a little bit, that's fine. But remember, of all the things that we do from this, four-legged animal exercise position, which is one of my favorites, probably my favorite thing to be is in terms of stationary exercise, is to be on the floor using the vertical load on the spine to really make sure that you are getting all of the conditioning work in that you need to in a really efficient way, because we can do so many different exercises that work multiple parts of the body, from the animalic, like the primitive kind of position of being on all fours. All right, we're not going to be on our knees the whole time. We're going to be on our toes because, as I said, we're on our feet and on the floor. So the bottom line is we're kind of going back to four-legged animal movements in a lot of ways here. Let's start with a couple of cat camels where you drop your head like a bowling ball, round up your spine. Just take a deep breath here so that you can get that height through the cervical part of your spine and promote the plasticity of all of the soft tissues that activate and sort of govern the movement of your trunk and thus the rest of your body, the center of your kinetic chain. So the camel portion of this, of course, is where you lift your head and your chest up and you contract the lower back a little bit. So you be careful if you have back issues. And lots of people have lower back issues, so you really want to be careful with that part. But take another deep breath, neutralize your spine, flatten it out. All right, then drop your body down to your elbows, walk your legs out. We're going to hold a plank for 30 seconds. And this is a plank. It's one of the most efficient ways to activate and force all of the components of your insides to work in coordination with one another. So if it's too hard on your toes, you're about 10 seconds in, you can lower to your knees, but make sure your butt is down because it should be challenging. You're 20 seconds in, 10 more to go. Take a breath. If you want to make it harder, you can do things like jumping jacks on the floor. We're going to do some different variations in a minute, but just focus on your breath. Now gently lower to your knees and sit yourself into child's pose, where you sit your butt right on top of your heels and then drape your torso across your thighs with your arms straight out like Superman, elbows in the air. Don't let your elbows drop to the floor because you also want that shoulder stretch. And that is more productive when your arms are straight and not bent with your elbows dropped to the floor. Now we've taken a couple more deep breaths in child's pose. What I want you to do is lift up into downward facing dog. That means that your hands stay on the floor. Keep those fingers splayed so that you don't mash the wrists, push the wrists too heavy into the floor. And then your feet are on the floor. Your knees are off the floor. Your legs are straight-ish, hopefully, and your butt is in the air making a triangle with the floor. This is downward facing dog, an activity that I love. I call them activities so that you don't think we're doing any exercises. Do you see how the tricky, how I'm tricking you? Wordsmithing these the names of these exercises, these movements into your brain. You bend your knees just a little bit, and then like you're going to go back to quadruped, but then you straighten your legs back out. This is called a downward dog squat, or something I call a pike squat. And I only say that because I have this thing about yoga terms, but the downward facing dog is such a great exercise, a movement that stretches out the back of the leg, the butt, really, really helps you kind of get a good sense of where your head is in terms of where your body is, right? Like really that combination, that connection that you need to always go back to, because you're never going to just have it all the time. Being one with your body, understanding what your body needs and what your brain needs in order to be and maintain your health. Really, really super important. So I love downward facing dog, but we're moving now. You're bending your knees, lowering your body down to the floor. This is another interaction with gravity. So it naturally boosts your heart rate because you're pressing up against the gravitational force of this earth, which is resistance. All right. Then lower back down to your elbows and go back to your plank for another 30 seconds. All right. This time, if you are in plank and you can hold on your toes for 30 seconds, your time is already gone ahead and started. You can move a little bit by lifting up one foot, tapping across to the side and then back, or jacks, plank jacks, where you jump both feet out, jump both feet in. You're 12 seconds in now to this second plank. We're basically going to just kind of do a snowball kind of circuit here, where the exercise circuit is just going to add one move. As we continue, we got just a couple more to go, right? Because this is never more than a 20-minute podcast. All right, rest again in child's pose. Couple of deep breaths. Yeah, you got this. All right, now I'm going to have you lift back up into downward facing dog. Back into that pike squat. I'll turn the music up a little bit here so you got a little more music. And go ahead now and bend those knees and straighten the legs again for another 30 seconds. These pike squats, bending the knees, lifting back up into that straightened downward facing dog or pike position. Now, if you want, as you lift back up into the straightened leg position, you could also do a little bounce at the top. That is a little tiny hop at the top. We can make these a little more intensive. We call them monkey jumps when we get into really taking this position and going, back to the primitive sort of nature of the four-legged animal, where it's a donkey kick or a monkey jump, where you lift the feet up off the floor as you come up out of the downward dog squat. Couple more seconds. Keep it going, no matter what it is you've ended up sort of deciding to do for your comfort level, your ability level. End up in downward facing dog now. Take 3 deep breaths. And what we're going to do is we're going to shift the body weight forward so that you're back to plank, but on your hands, we're going to perform 20 seconds of push-ups. If you need to drop to your knees, your time starts now. If you need to drop to your knees, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure that you are inhaling on your way down, exhaling as you lift back up. Don't think of how many you're doing, because it doesn't matter. You're 10 seconds in. You can do another 10 seconds of push-ups. It is definitely about the time that you put in the effort, the control that you have over your entire body. Okay. Now, rest back in child's pose for a couple seconds. You can shake out your wrists a little bit. We've got just a couple more exercises to add on here. So go ahead and as you take your breaths in child's pose, remember we're going back to a plank. Then we're going to go to downward dog and downward dog squats or pike squats. We're going to do push-ups. And then I'm going to add on another exercise, 2 more exercises to complete the routine for the day. Okay, so we're getting close here. Go back to your plank, another 30-second plank. That's 4 30-second planks, just in case you're counting. That's 2 minutes of plank for this routine alone. So good for you, something that you could do every single day. So your plank, you're 10 seconds in already. Go ahead and remember if you need to drop to your knees because your abs are getting tired, that again is fine. Just keep your butt down. Make sure that you're using the natural resistance of gravity is disturbed by that angle with your butt in the air. That's why it's so important for you to keep your butt flat and your back flat. Okay, now back to child's pose. That was your 30 seconds. Third plank down. You got 1 more to go. So you're resting in child's pose, stretching out your shoulders, stretching out your back, taking a couple of deep breaths, then lift up into downward facing dog. Take a deep breath here as you exhale. Begin that round. 30 seconds starts now of those downward dog squats or pike squats, where you bend your knees and then straighten your legs back up. And again, if you want, you can alternate a couple of variations here. You're about 10 seconds in, you bend your knees, you can do a little hop at the top. You could lift up one leg and do a couple, just 1 or 2 downward dog squats or pike squats with one leg in the air, one leg down. So lots of different ways to add variety to these types of exercises. Okay, rest for just a second in child's pose if you need to, but we're going next to push-ups. So you're going to flatten out your back from that downward dog position into push-up position, making sure that your hands and your shoulders line up again vertically. 20 seconds of push-ups. Go ahead and get started. Inhale on your way down. Push up by exhaling and making sure that you are using the whole hand. Again, you don't want to mash just the wrist, the heel of your hand into your floor. You want to distribute your body weight to the entire hand. Finish the last one that you're on and drop back down to child's pose. Last round coming up. All right. Now, what we're going to do now is you're in child's pose. You're going to take another big deep breath. We're going back to plank. Try something that you haven't done yet. Side planks, variation from forward-facing plank to where you're facing the floor. Turn to your sides. All right, let's try that. 30 seconds, go. So if you are capable, again, you've got to be able to do the plank for 30 seconds in order to add some of this variety in. But if it's not possible for you to hold plank for 30 seconds, it's perfectly suitable for you to hold plank on your knees. The lever is shortened, but you are still isometrically contracting all of the muscles, the layers of muscles, and your organs inside your trunk. It's a really powerful way to activate and stimulate the muscles and therefore control your kinetic chain better. Last 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, and sorry, that was a little longer than 30 seconds. But anyway, rest in child's pose before we move on to downward dog. Take a couple of deep breaths. Sorry, I do that sometimes when I'm talking a lot. But lift now back up into downward facing dog for the last time. Stretch out the back of the legs. Again, for the last time, make sure that your butt is high in the air and make sure that you keep that, you focus on making sure that you use your whole hand with your wrists on the floor at this point, okay? Now, last downward dog squats. 30 seconds, go. We're at 19 minutes. We're going to be done here very soon. Just a couple more exercises so you can do this. Downward dog squats, bending the knees, straightening the leg, add a hop at the top if you want. You could also add a hop at the top and move the body a little to the left and then move the body a little to the right as you're doing those little hops. You're 13 seconds away, but keep it moving. Even if you're moving slowly, again, it doesn't matter how many you do. It matters that you're spending the time controlling your body, working against resistance, interacting with gravity. That is your metabolic boost, folks. You don't need a cardio machine for your exercise, period. You just don't. Okay, back to child's pose if you want for a second. We're going to this push-ups, though. Now, next is 20 seconds, your last 20 seconds of push-ups. All right, so if you're in child's pose, taking a breath, let's go back to push-up position. Even if it's on your knees, your time starts now. 20 seconds of push-ups. Inhale on your way down as you bend your elbows, pushing up as you exhale. Very good. Okay, the last thing we're going to do is mountain climbers. And they don't have to be super fast. Last 30 seconds I'm going to have you do is to move your legs forward and back as you're in the push-up position. So your hands are still on the floor. But here's the thing. If your hands now, your wrists are sore or getting tired rather, you can lower to your elbows perfectly fine. Do the movement with your legs back in regular plank, because push-up starting position is just plank. But your time starts now. You're moving your legs forward and back. If you're moving them quickly, those are mountain climbers. If you're moving them slowly, they're, I call them mountain hikers or mountain walkers. It's really not necessary to sort of jump your feet forward and back in a really abrupt high intensity, at a high intensity level. The walking motion is perfectly suitable, especially if you're just getting started. So 20 minutes of daily exercise before you get off to, you make your way out of your home to your office or to school or to wherever it is that you've got to go. Wake up, find a spot in your living room, and then wake up the body as you wake up your mind. Take the deep breaths. You will be more productive. You will be healthier. You will enjoy your day more, because then you won't have to leave the office and go to the gym. So, on that note, I'll see you later. I'm Coach Kim from InShape Fitness. I'll be back next week with another new workout. Have a great day.